Hi guys, you're very welcome to the Leaving Cert Physics predictions and tips for our exam in 2024. My name is Tom Dixon and I'll be speaking you through a few predictions and tips for the exam in June. We have to kind of say at the start with regards the predictions, due to the nature of the exam now with the extra choice on it, the physics exam for most part of it, the entire course is examined. So predictions wise, it is quite hard to predict exactly what will come up. But there are definitely a lot of predictions with regards experiments and a lot of tips that you could use that I'm going to go through here. So definitely very worth a listen. I am the physics teacher here at ExamRevision.ie and have a lot of experience here. So I'm just going to walk you through the exam from start to finish and let you know exactly what I think would be good to look at for this year. So first of all, if we just have a look at the structure of the paper for this year, if we have a look at the adjustments made for this year, in section A, which is your experiments, instead of 3 questions or 4 questions do 3, you now have 5 questions do 3. In section B, we used to have 8 questions do 5, you now have 9 questions do 5. And in question 6, which is the short questions, instead of 10 do 8, we now have 12 do 8. So lots of extra choice for us, and we will be looking at ways today to maximize choice. With regards to timing, I know some people do worry at times about timing, but I wouldn't be overly worried here. I don't think many people will run out of time. But in saying that, you would want to kind of stick to the guidelines of time here that I'm going to give you. So overall, the exam is 3 hours long. What I would advise is for our section A questions, which are experiment questions, I would advise 15 minutes apiece. And I'll talk a bit more about them in the next slide. But 15 minutes apiece. For our long questions then, we 5 of those, and I would advise maybe 20 minutes apiece. Now, these are obviously averages. Some questions you will do quicker, some questions will take you a little bit longer, but that will lead us up to 145 minutes or 2 hours and 25. So you have an extra 35 minutes after that to do the rest of the exam. So what I would spend that 35 minutes doing, you're obviously going to spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes either side at the start and the end, looking through and deciding on your questions, and then you will have time to do an extra question. So I would always advise to try do an extra question, maybe an extra experiment question if you feel that maybe one of them didn't go your way, or an extra long question, or both if you happen to get through quick enough. It will always be the case that all questions done will be answered, and you will be given the marks from your best 3 experiments and your best 5 long questions. So moving on then to more specifics. So if we look at section A, which is the experiment questions, as we said already, this is a section where we have 5 questions do 3. Now, all questions are worth 40 marks each. And being honest, I would always say for all students, higher or ordinary, whether you're looking for a H1 or you're looking for a H7, these are our bread and butter. We need to be aiming for above 30, no matter who you are, in every experiment. And that is very achievable for everybody. So my advice would be for your experiments. Number 1, what do you need to know for them? So we need to know the diagram, the procedure, the calculation / graph, and I'll speak about that in a minute, some sources of error, and then how to analyze our results. They are your 5 big things to know. If we know them for all experiments, we'll have no problems here. So my tips would be to start with the experiment you are most comfortable with. So you spend 5 minutes at the start or less than 5 minutes and you scan through your 5 experiments that are there and you say, which one am I most comfortable with, and start there. So we're going and we're getting the confidence up and we're getting the marks on the board. And remember that 40 marks, we're aiming for above 30. Those of you who are aiming for higher grades, maybe H4 and up, would want to be aiming for a minimum of 35 out of 40 in each experiment. As we say, the way they have gone now with 5 experiments, there will probably be one question from each topic of mechanics, light, heat and electricity. And looking at the papers since the adjustments have come in, that seems to be the case. I'll go into more specifics now in a few minutes. Nextly, graphs. So when we're drawing graphs, there's a lot of marks to go for graphs, and we have to be very careful not to lose silly marks. So for example, make sure you label all axes. If it's a graph where you have to draw a line of best fit, which a lot of them do have, make sure you draw your line of best fit where applicable, and make sure you state the relationship between the two quantities. So there are certain questions that will tell you explicitly to state the relationship. But even if they don't, there's no harm in stating the relationship anyway. Because, as I said, you will never be docked marks for stating it, but you could possibly be docked marks for not having it there. So always graph, line of best fit, or whichever way you want to draw your line, and state the relationship between them. For our calculations, some experiments such as latent heat of vaporization, latent heat of fusion, and specific heat capacity, as well as some versions of the concave mirror, convex lens, or wave nature of light. They have calculations instead of a graph. So where normally your 18 to 20 marks or 15 to 20 marks even would be going for your graph, instead on these questions they're going for your calculations. Now, there's good and bad with this. If you struggle with these calculations, or if you don't like them or you're not good at them, well then you're going to stay away from these experiments. On the other hand, if you do like the calculations, it's a great thing to do instead of a graph, because rather than having to draw 3 graphs for 3 different experiments, you might do 2 graphs and a calculation, or 1 graph and 2 experiments with calculations. And for most of these, so such as specific heat capacity of water, specific latent heat of fusion, and specific latent heat of vaporization, we know the answer that we're going to want. So you will know by the end of your experiment if you've got the right answer or not, because we know the values for these. And last but not least, are graph calculations. So on most of the experiments, you may be asked to use your graph to do something. And as long as you need to know what your graph says or what it's doing and how you're going to use most of the time the slope. So a lot of the time when they say use the graph, they're talking about the slope. So we need you to know what the slope represents and how to use it. There are certain graphs that use something else, such as for your concave mirror and your convex lens, you're looking at the X and Y intercepts. And on those ones, the X and Y intercepts are equal to 1 over F. So for each specific graph, know what the calculation means, know what's needed for the calculation and how to use it. And then just a general one for all of them, know some sources of error, because they're generally the last kind of 4 marks or 6 marks are centered around sources of error. Looking across what I think might appear or what might be good to look at would be, I would like to see a heat question there. I know vaporization was up last year, but before that, fusion of ice hasn't been up in a little while, nor has specific heat capacity. I'd also like to see some questions on waves. So maybe the sonometer experiments, so frequency versus length or frequency versus tension for a stretched string, or possibly the speed of sound. And then I always think for the electricity ones, there are a couple that are definitely worth learning. So for example, the variation of current with potential difference, V against I, for, you've got 4 separate experiments, but really you've got four for the price of one, because there are very subtle changes throughout, and all that really changes are the results and the graph. So that's your V against I for A, metallic conductor, B, semiconductor diode, C, filament bulb, or D, copper sulfate solution and copper electrodes. Really and truly, it's, if you want to get your most bang for buck of learning and studying before the exam, these are the ones you want to look at. You basically learn one and you know all 4. The only thing that's going to differ is the graph at the end. Another one that's very, very similar to that in electricity is our variation of resistance with temperature for A, a metallic conductor, and B, a thermistor. So the setup, the method, our sources of error are all very, very similar, if not identical. The only difference is going to be your results and the shape of your graph. And as long as you know what those graphs are going to look like and know why they look like that, you're on a winner there as well. And lastly, question 1 is normally a mechanics experiment, and just looking at the last couple of years, neither of the experiments with the air track have been asked in the last 3 years. So F is equal to ma, so Newton's second law, or conservation of momentum. So that might be something to have a look at for this year as well. I'd like to see one of those come up. And again, they're very, very similar setups. There's calculations there to be done as well. So it's something that we could definitely look at, and by learning kind of one, you've got a lot of the other one as well. So that's my tips for the experiments. Next then we move on to our long questions. Now, as I said to you at the start of this, predictions for long questions are almost impossible to make, purely down to the fact that they are essentially assessing the whole course here. So there will be something across the majority of the course, but there is some things, some tips I can tell you, and definitely steer you in the right direction. And one of the biggest mistakes I see students make is going in kind of blind with no plan of what questions to answer or what not to answer. So that would be one of my biggest things going forward. So what I have put together here is an order in which I think you should attempt to answer the questions. And what we're aiming to do here is to maximize the choice that you have. So you've been given extra choice, but let's maximize that altogether. So as said, long questions, let's just run through them really quick. We've got 9 questions, we're going to answer 5. They are all 56 marks a piece, and you should really and truly be spending about 20 minutes per question. Now, as I said before, that's an average 20 minutes. There are some questions you will do quicker, and there are some questions that will take a little bit longer. But let's get into them. First and foremost, I think without a doubt, the question that should be done first is question 6. And question 6 is 12 parts, do 8. This is your short questions. And I just think it's a great one to ease you in, and it's a great one to clock up marks for everybody. So whether you're doing higher level, whether you're doing ordinary level, this is the one to go at. So there are 12 short questions which cover the whole course, and they're 7 marks apiece. You're asked to answer 8. Now, I would always say answer as many as possible, because as I've said before, they will always take your best 8. The marking scheme goes as follows. It's 7, 4, 0. So if you get it fully correct, it's 7. If you get a half right, it's 4. And if you don't get it correct, it's 0. So very easy to clock up marks there. And it's a very, very useful question. I would be a big fan of it, and I would always encourage people to start off here. Get the marks on the board and do as many as possible. After question 6, I would jump straight to the last question, which for you this year is question 14. Now, question 14 has A, B, C, and D. They are 4 28 markers. So essentially, they are 4 half questions, and you have to do 2. So as I said to you already, we're maximizing our choice here by hitting the questions which have the most choice first. So 4 parts, do 2. again, be spread across the course. So you're just going to have 4 different parts there spread across the course, and generally nice questions. And generally most students would find that out of the 4 parts, there would nearly always be 2 parts that would suit them. So a definite question to do in my book as well as number 2. After this then, I would always go and look for the option question. So the option question for you have either studied particle physics or applied electricity. It's going to be there somewhere. Now, if we're lucky enough, and it has been the way we have over the last 3 years, so since the adjustments has come in, it has always come up as a full long question. Now, one year, 2021, it came up as question 13, but mostly it comes up in 2022 and 2023 came up as question 12. And this will be what most of you will do, will be particle physics. Some of you might do the applied electricity, but most will be particle physics. Now, the reason I say go for this is you know it's going to be there. And it's going to be there in one of 2 ways. It's going to be there as a full question, fingers crossed, or if not, it may be there as one of the half questions on question 14. But we would hope for all intents and purposes that it's going to be there as question 14. You're banking on it being there. It's one of the guaranteed questions. So I would definitely go and have a look and see if it's there as a full question. And then if it's there as a full question, I have learned it. I've done my research on it. There's not, the calculations aren't overly tough in it. A lot of it's theory. Let's just get it done. And that's 3 questions done so far. So we've 3 questions out of 5 done without even really thinking too much about what we're doing. We're getting in there. We're doing question 6, which is your choice, short questions. We're doing question 14, which again is your choice. And then last but not least, we're doing question 12, which is our option. Now, where do we go after this? Now it's down to personal preference. So what I would always advise is go and have a look at question 13. Now, question 13, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is the question which has the paragraph, or like a reading comprehension or paragraph with questions to follow it. Now, it's not like some other maybe junior cert exams where the answers to the questions are in the paragraph. It will just be a paragraph about a certain topic, and then you will have questions on that topic. But the reason I would say to always go and look at it would be if it happens to be a topic that you like. The questions are normally nice, and they're normally marked as 7 marks a piece or a multiple of 7. So you might have, we'll say 6 7s and then a 14 or something of that, and generally marked like the ones I said before were 7 4 0. They're also generally asked in a way that just because you can't do part A doesn't mean you can't do B, C, D, and E. So although they're around the same topic, they're generally not specifically linked all the way down. A great question to do if you like the topic that it's on. So for example, if it's on a heat and you happen to like heat, I would definitely jump on that one. And as I said, you're clocking up the marks there in 7s, and very, very easy to do quite well in these. And then lastly, we've got, so up until that, we have 4 questions out of 5 done by basically doing our question 6, our question 14, our option question, and then the one with the paragraph. And after that, then it's completely down to choice. So if you are a fan of heat, go and do the heat question. If you're a fan of light, go and do the light question. If you're a fan of mechanics, go and do the mechanics question. I would just be wary of question 7, and I always say this to all of my students. Question 7 is the mechanics question. Now, if you're a lover of mechanics, if you possibly do applied maths as well, well then this question will suit you, and you may love it, and it may be the question that you find easiest. But I would notice over my years of experience that is arguably one of the worst answer questions, because it comes across as very familiar and almost reads quite easy, but not necessarily is the easiest question on the paper. So I would always just be wary of it. I'm not telling everyone to steer away from it, but be wary of it. But the area in which I kind of like the most, and I would steer people towards, would be the modern physics. So modern physics takes into account particle physics, which is your option, the electron, and radioactivity, and nuclear physics. They're the three topics if you want. Now, if we just have a look over the past 3 years, there have been 2.5 full questions. So 2 full questions and a half question based around these three topics. Now, if we pair that with question 6 and question 14, we're looking at having 4 of the 5 questions done between the short questions, the other one on 14, and the 2 other modern physics questions. So I think it's imperative that everyone looks at it. They're really interesting topics. The maths in them isn't overly difficult, as long as you get on top of it. There's a little bit of maths in each one, and as long as you get on top of it, they're not overly difficult. So it's definitely an area that if I was a student now and I was looking towards my Leaving Cert, that I would definitely have a look to say, right, I need to get on top of this because I can get an awful lot of marks out of these. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But these are the predictions or tips that I would be leaning towards. Then after that, you're looking at maybe heat, waves, light, or electricity. Electricity could be come up in a couple of different ways. You could have kind of voltage, current, and resistance, or you could have electromagnetic induction, or you could have static electricity. All different types of questions that can come out. So there is quite a lot to learn in the electricity, but if that's your thing, again, you could get 2 separate questions based on electricity. So that is all I'm going to say on that, is that there's the order that I would advise. There's the topics that I would advise looking at first, and then after that, it's up to you. And then just the last bit, keep an eye on the time. So you're looking at 20 minutes on average, but on each question, just 20 to 25 minutes. The likes of question 6 there, you will get done quicker. There is no doubt about it. It will be done quicker. But you can use this extra time, so you could go to 25 minutes maybe on the option question or something else which might be taking you a little bit longer. So 20 to 25 minutes and get it done, and do an extra one if you can. Now, just a quick look at exam revision itself. So we're looking at our complete revision package, and what do you get on our complete revision package as an exam revision user. So you can see a few of the bits there from the laptop or the tablet or your phone. So you have access to it across any platform. You can also see that we have 10% off the package if you use 2024 tips as a code when you're purchasing. And if we look at our complete revision package, what we have on offer. So we've got a range of junior and Leaving Cert subjects on the platform, and each subject covers the entire course in detail. And we're looking at support in the form of video tutorial guides, PowerPoint presentations on every topic. So for my physics ones, every separate topic has its own PowerPoint presentations, along with video tutorials for calculations or graphs or anything like that where things may be tough. You'll also get H1 notes on every single topic, which covers the theory and the calculation side of things. And we've got sample exam papers and mock paper questions done out. We've got marking schemes for all of these. We've got quizzes, we've got reflection logs, and we've got smart adaptive technology to guide your learning. So a really, really useful access 24/7 to every subject that you sign up to. So really, really comprehensive courses covered here at Exam Revision. Excuse me now. So just to have a look really quick, we cover 8 subjects at junior cycle, and we cover 17 subjects at Leaving Cert. So these are all your subjects that are covered at Leaving Cert. So if you have more than one subject that you're looking to sign up for, we've got plenty for everybody. And just a quick walkthrough here. And you can see some of the reviews as well. So we've got plenty of really positive reviews from students. And one of the biggest things they say is that they can access these and use them all in their own time, which is huge. So because we've got video tutorials, because we've got, for example, on the physics, I've got all calculations done out, answers to questions, how I go about doing these things, all done in video form, but then you can access it whenever you need to. So there is also a 1-day intensive revision course across a load of different subjects at ExamRevision here for May. So it's kind of your last chance to enroll, and what you receive is you get tuition from fully qualified subject experts, you get practice exam questions and techniques, H1 standard study notes is what you get live and on demand, so you can look at it live, but you'll also get access to it whenever you need to, which is great. Again, you've got past and probable exam questions that are likely to appear on this 2024 exam, and your bundle deal at the moment is 3 courses for €349 or 5 courses for €449, and it does sound like a lot, but that means it's €89 per course, which is very reasonable considering the level of teaching and notes and access that you are getting. So this is your last chances to sign up for that, and they're this May. And last but not least, you have your discount code here, 2024 tips, and that will give you 10% off the complete revision package. So the very best of luck to everyone taking part in the physics exam this June, and I hope to see you at the revision course in May. Thank you very much.